Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you as always for joining me and making this part of your morning routines. It is very much appreciated. I hope that you've had a good start to your weeks. I hope that Tuesday, which is, if I'm very honest, it's the worst day of the week. It's Tuesdays is the worst day. People like to say it's Monday. But no, because Monday, I feel the most rested. The weekend comes by, football's back, I feel energized. Monday, I'm like, yeah, we're going to tackle this week. And then Monday hits you and you're like, oh, Tuesday. Tuesday is tough. Very, very tough indeed. So, yes, indeed, we are back and ready to take on the news as always. And I look forward to breaking it down with you. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Good morning. To Matt G, to Kevin, to James, good morning to Nate, to Rich, Kaiser, good morning to other James as well. Femi, MJ10, Temi, Olu, Jacob, Martin, Jake, Matt G, Jasha, Carl, Mark, Steve, Martin, Chris, and Josh. Plenty more of you all tuning in to the chat box as well. I saw someone asking, Phil says, where's Morgie's picture? It's right here. I was at the office yesterday, so I didn't get a chance to put it up, but don't worry. I feel like it should go up elsewhere, in the house. I feel like putting it behind me, having a picture of yourself on the wall in your office, in plain view of the camera. I feel as though it's quite a self-centered thing. So we're going to find a place for it in the house. Don't you worry. It is going to be going up so that any visitors I have can peruse it with pure joy and amusement as well. So don't you worry, Morgie's artwork and fine work that it is will be rewarded with its rightful place in the house. Right, let's, without further ado, crack on with today's stories. And we're going to start with a rant, as you can probably expect. Wolves have received an apology from the PGMOL after a VAR mistake, costing them what could have been, had they have scored that penalty, a very important point against Manchester United, who won 1-0 at Old Trafford last night. I cannot kind of really explain, using words that I would love to use, how frustrating, angry, just so annoyed it makes me with this sort of thing happening. In the first weekend of a brand new season, they are having to apologize for their ineptitude, really, at making the correct decisions in games. This is what generates people's view that more than meets the eye is going on. And these allegations that I cannot, other than understand why people have them, because I absolutely empathize why people have their views. Because it just makes me doubt the legitimacy of the competition when things so blatantly obvious that hundreds, potentially thousands and millions of people can see that it's a penalty. Everyone can see it's a penalty. So why is the person that has got to make the decision and that has trained and has prepared for the brand new season, why are they unable to make the right call? Like, I get when there are things that are a lot more subjective, like what a deliberate handball might be. I get that. What constitutes serious foul play in terms of a red card. But when a goalkeeper misses the ball and takes out another player completely late, where anywhere else on the field where an outfield player to do the same, that they would be punished with a foul, can it not be given? And shame on Erik ten Hag as well, because Erik ten Hag could have had the humility after the game to say, we were very lucky, which he did, by the way, but he then proceeded to say that he didn't think it was a penalty. Just own up to it. If this was the other way around, the shoe was on the other foot, and this was Arsenal, I'd be saying we were incredibly lucky and it should have been a penalty. And I hope that Arteta would have done the same. Or at least pulled a Wenger and said, I've not seen it yet. There's no shame in saying that you've not had enough time to look at it if you've only seen it from the side of the pitch without the benefit of replays. I get that. But to say that you don't think it's a penalty, shame on you. You're part of the problem. And I hope to high heaven that Eric Ten Hag does not complain about an officiating decision for the rest of this season. Because if he does, he's a hypocrite. It's as simple as that. Because it is the only reason that he's saying that he doesn't think it's a penalty is because it's his team that it goes against. This is unacceptable. It's wrong. And when you want to go out of your way to punish coaches for, you know, more than what is deemed acceptable touchline behaviour with yellow cards, and book Gary O'Neill as well for that reaction, when all that we saw from the side of the field in that moment was a blatant penalty being not given. I'm sorry, but you can't be punishing people when the people doing the punishing can't get their jobs right. It's ridiculous, stupid, and quite frankly, an embarrassment to the game that it is. And Wolves should be feeling very, 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 very hard done by, as we were last season with, of course, our game against Brentford. So there you go. Moving on to more direct Arsenal-related news. Nicolas Pepe has agreed a 3-year contract with Besiktas, reportedly, according to reports coming out of Turkey. However, there is still yet to be an agreement between the player and Arsenal about a potential kind of mutual termination of his contract, if that is indeed the route that they want to go down. Arsenal have been reluctant at this stage. They've wanted to try and get a transfer fee. Besiktas have been very reluctant themselves to get or come to any kind of agreement over a transfer fee. Arsenal will be hoping that something can be done so that they do not suffer financially in any way from this, other than the investment that they paid to Lille back in 2019, which of course is a huge waste of money, sadly. But Nicolas Pepe, it looks to be, is going to be on the way out permanently from Arsenal this season. Gabriel, meanwhile, according to a number of outlets now, especially and those based in Saudi and based here in the UK, is being linked with a move to Saudi Arabia. The player is said to have been approached by potential clubs. This obviously does follow him being dropped to the bench for the first game of the Premier League season. If Arsenal have, you know, for me, any sense, they will not allow this deal to happen unless that they get a ridiculous fee. And I'm talking like 60 million upwards pounds. There's only one way in which that goes, you know, and you have to, if it's a stupid amount of money, then maybe you can, and you've got a very good replacement, maybe you can justify it, but it has to be way upwards of 60 million pounds for me, way up, you know, and that's the only way I can ever justify it, potentially even more than that, 70, 80, you know, because Gabriel, mid-20s, before hitting his prime, played really well for us last season. For me, was a better player than Saliba across a longer period of time in the season. We can't afford to lose him unless we're able to bring in something absolutely mad in the reaction of that. So Gabriel being linked with the move away. But yeah, let's see what happens. But fingers crossed, Arsenal do not give in to any Saudi moves for Gabriel. Monaco has said to continue to be leading the race, according to Secret Scout, for Folarin Balogun. We've still not heard anything regarding another bid as of yet. We know that they've rejected one bid already. There have been suggestions that another bid went in at around £40 million, which also was rejected, but I've not been able to confirm that one. We know that one at £34.4 million, 40 million euros, certainly was rejected. Arsenal have a valuation close to 50. It's my understanding, as I've been saying, that Arsenal want to at least get a record sale for Folarin Balogun if he is to leave this summer. But it does seem that we're edging towards hopefully a conclusion to this in the next couple of weeks. Well, we have to, because the season will be well underway and the window will be closing. But Arsenal will be hoping to get over £40 million if they can for Folarin Balogun in this window. Now, big news yesterday, of course, was that we lost and are going to lose Jurrien Timber. Jurrien Timber suffering a serious knee injury. We're still awaiting proper confirmation about what type of ligament injury it is. However, Mike Valwijk from the Dutch outlet De Telegraaf, I believe, that he writes for, has reported that it is an ACL issue. I spoke to Dr. Rajpal Bra, of course, our colleague from our Eat, Sleep, Arsenal, Repeat podcast, who will be hopefully relaunching this Thursday, of which I wrote an article on football.london talking about kind of the different timelines. And sadly, if it is a ACL injury that requires surgical reconstruction, it will be a 7 to 9 month potential absence for Timber to get back to full fitness. You know, it's a minimum of 6 months, and then you got to get back to full fitness as well and get back to playing. It is one of the worst things that could have happened to us at the start of the season. And The only good thing, and there is only one saving grace about this news, and that is that we are still in the transfer window and that Arsenal still have time between now and the end of the summer to find, for me, absolutely a necessity of a replacement. We have to sign somebody. There is not yes, we have depth at left back in Zinchenko and Kivior and Tomiyasu and Kieran Tierney technically still. Yes, we have those replacements, but for me, Timber was signed because of the William Saliba injury last season, and it allowed for Ben White to be more of a cover at right-sided centre-back like he played in the first game of the season to some degree. And Timber's signing allowed us to play and have Ben White more so as an option at centre-back, even though Timber himself also can play centre-back. And because of that, losing him for this amount of time, it is imperative that Arsenal sign somebody. The reality of the situation is this, is that Kieran Tierney is probably going to move on at some point, either this summer or in the near future. Not only that, but Rob Holding is expected to move on. Not only that, but I can see someone like Takahiro Tomiyasu potentially moving on at some point, either this year or next. And so, therefore, there is a scope, and there has been scope to sign somebody in the defensive area. And I've reported at Football.London that Arsenal have had an interest in bringing in another right back still this window, someone that offers them something different. And a right back for me is the signing that I would like to see. I would love to see a Mohammed Simakan, for instance, be brought in, someone like that. Of course, I know that Arsenal have had a genuine interest, although they've not formalised that interest, in Jeremy Frimpong of Bayer Leverkusen as well, who has been linked with a number of other clubs also. Ivan Fresneda is another name that we know Arsenal are very interested in. But a right back / if they can play centre back too, like a Simakan, for instance, would be a great option. But for me, we have to make sure that we go out and get ourselves another player. Now, there are suggestions that Kieran Tierney could still indeed move on this summer, and so he wouldn't act as technically a replacement. I do think that at left back, we are still well covered. You've got Zinchenko, you've got Kivior, you've got Tomiyasu that can all play there. You've also got Lino Souza, really exciting young talent that's coming through as a potential fourth choice if you really needed it. But we do have 3 options there should we need to, or we obviously can move to a different system, move to a back 3, which I think we are more than capable of playing in with White, Saliba and Gabriel if you wanted to go down that route. But we have 3 other options if Tierney was to leave and with Timber out at left back. So I don't think the left back is where we should make the signing. You know, I think it's the right back position that you would look to actually bring somebody in on that right-hand side. So it offers you the protection that Timber did allow us before his injury. But West Ham are said to be considering entering the race for Kieran Tierney. We're still waiting for news on a potential bid on that area, but nothing yet. In regards to a potential Arsenal move forwards, Aymeric Laporte and Joao Cancelo are mentioned as potential targets for Arsenal. A number of outlets, Sami Mokbel, John Cross, have all suggested that Laporte and Cancelo could be 2 options that Arsenal are looking at. But obviously, Laporte is more of a centre-back, a left-sided centre-back who can play left-back. Doesn't really fit the mould of what I was thinking that we should be looking to. Cancelo, though, obviously can play right-back, can play left-back. So that makes a lot more sense. And we know that Arsenal's interest in Cancelo has certainly been real. You know, there's been an interest in him for quite some time. I'm hoping that what we see is, you know, if Arsenal were going to move for a player like that, that they can move relatively quickly. Barcelona are very interested in, you know, in the player. So let's wait and see. Maybe we'll get an update on this one very, very soon indeed. Right. Our story is that West Ham United have opened talks with Kudus, Mohammed Kudus, Ajax as well, you know, over a move because they might be losing Lucas Paquetá. And if they do lose Lucas Paquetá, they see Mohammed Kudus as a player that they might potentially move for. There's been suggestions that the player is open to the move, which I find interesting because obviously it seemed he wasn't open to the idea of moving to Brighton. Otherwise, he would have agreed personal terms with the club. Maybe it was the inclusion of a buyout clause that there's been rumoured that Brighton would not have been open to, but that West Ham would be open to. For me, it's a frustration that this Timber injury has happened because I think the focus is going to shift from a forward player, which seemed to be something that Arsenal might do had they been able to successfully sell Balogun for a serious amount of money, and we might still do that. But the focus, I think, for Arsenal will turn very much to the defensive area. Once they've obviously still done some moving out of players. And, you know, as far as I'm told, the moving out of players is still remains at this point. You know, with 15 plus days left of the window, the priority, getting Pepe out, getting Balogun out, getting Lokonga out, getting Tavares out, Cedric out. That still remains a priority right now. So it might be that we see Arsenal move for a player towards the end of the window. We'll have to wait and see. But West Ham looking at Mohammed Kudus at this stage. So there you go. We are going to move to part 2 now and go through some of your questions and your comments right after this. Right then, let's go into the chat box and tackle as many of your questions as we can today. I can imagine that there's going to be plenty, so we're going to be sticking around to answering as many of them as feasibly possible. Sadiq says, is the injury confirmed? So sad. The injury is sadly confirmed in the case of it happening. We're still waiting for details of the specificity of it in terms of what the actual ligament is, although there's been rumours in the Dutch press that it is the ACL. That's what the players' camp apparently have been saying. But they're waiting to do more tests to get it completely confirmed about what the next stage of the process is going to be. But yeah, it's really sucks. It really sucks. I had him down as my signing of the season. It's going to have to take a little bit of a change now, sadly, because of this situation. But he was going to be great. And we may not see him now until next season, which is really gutting. Gibby Box says, whatever happened to Brooke Norton-Cuffy? Again, he's still at the club. He hasn't actually moved away from the club yet. There's expectations that a loan move is probably the next step. I think people have hyped Brooke Norton-Cuffy up a lot. You know, I think that I certainly was even a bit responsible for that at the start because we talked about him being a really exciting young player. But the reality is that Brooke Norton-Cuffy is still raw. There's still a lot to his game that needs to improve. There's still a lot to his what we're expecting of him to still get better. His crossing needs to improve. His decision-making in the final third needs to improve. And when he was away at both Rotherham and Coventry, it was commented on that those areas of his game aren't still of the level of Premier League standard player. So, we can hype up these youngsters as much as we like, but we have to come to the realization that they still might not be ready to join the Arsenal team. We've also got Royal Waters, of course, as well. Don't forget Royal Waters. I think he would need a loan. I think he needs to go to a senior club and play for a season and see what he does. But he's also very highly rated as well. Mauro says, why can't referees also do post interviews or press conferences to explain their reasoning and decision making? I don't know, Mauro, but I think that it's absolutely something. I would love to be able to have the chance to speak to referees in the mix zone after games. They walk past us and we're kind of expected just to allow them to walk past. Don't question them in any way. But yeah, you're not going to get an answer if you do because they're not contracted to have to stop. So yeah, they should be questioned. Absolutely. T Down Under says, Tom, another signing must be dependent on departures. It's going to be slightly in terms of time and resources. We're trying to move on players. It's not to do with necessarily a budgeting thing. It's more to do with a financial fair play aspect as well, which I know that everybody talking about Chelsea is saying, how can Chelsea be doing all of this stuff? And we're, suffering with trying to get Raya on loan because it's a financial fair play thing. If you listen to Simon Jordan on TalkSport, he explained the situation with Chelsea really well. He explained why they're not facing any financial fair play question marks right now, but they probably could do in the future if things don't improve on the pitch. So I'd recommend going and giving that a listen as to an explanation as to why Chelsea currently are actually technically, in some ways, based upon their outgoings and incomings, technically still in some kind of profit. But I think that ignores all of some of the other deals that they've still got on the balance sheets. But I don't know. I think it's more so what I do understand is that if they don't improve and don't get back into the Champions League and don't improve their incomes, they are going to be in some serious trouble in the near future. DR says, Tom, Webb said that he was going to fix VAR, and by God, he has fixed it. What do you think? Well, he hasn't fixed it at all. And sadly, unfortunately, it is having a detrimental impact on the outcome of the Premier League. If Manchester United were to get into the top four or pip any team by more than a point, there is question marks about how legitimate that position in the table is, because Wolves should have had a penalty, which, doesn't guarantee them a goal, but gives them a great chance of one. Had they actually been able to get that chance, and it undermines the league table after a single game week. That league table may not be representative of what it should be had the right decision been made in that game. And that's what we face at the moment. And Arsenal, we missed out on a couple of points because of the Brentford fiasco. Those 2 points wouldn't have necessarily closed the gap enough for us to win the league. But who knows what those 2 points in that win would have done going into the Man City game. You know, we played Man City after that Brentford game. Had we have got that win, had that goal not have stood, rightly not have stood, who knows what that would have done for the confidence of the side going to Man City. So it's very difficult and very frustrating, obviously, indeed. LJ says, why can't we import foreign referees, scrap the PGMOL and hire refs from abroad? Well, Arsenal, the PGMOL have hired referees from outside. I believe there is it Garrett? Garrett something has came from over from Australia. I can't remember his surname. It's going to bother me. So someone in the chat box help me out. It's the Australian guy came over and has joined. So they are importing, referees from other nations and from other leagues. But, I certainly always look at the map that they produce of where referees are based, and they seem that they're all from up north, bar a few that are from the Midlands. Very few are down south. It's very, very difficult to understand why that there is a lack of diversity amongst referees. There is a real lack of diversity, and I feel as though others aren't being given opportunities. There should be a league table. There should be a situation where referee Jared Gillett, thank you, is the name of the referee I was thinking of, and he's not. He's made some significant mistakes, I think, as well. I think he's been involved in a number of Arsenal games that made some significant mistakes too. There needs to be a league table for referees. Mistakes should face accountability. Referees should be not suspended for a week. They should have to go and referee in a lower league, and then the best referee in those lower leagues come up to the Premier League. That should be happening more regularly than it currently does, in my view. So there you go. Let's go to Lee says, why do players that join Arsenal who previously were never injured come to Arsenal and break down? Is it our medical staff or the way that we train? Look, what I do want to say is that the doctors at halftime in the game between Arsenal and Nottingham Forest did all the checks for an ACL or that type of injury. That injury happened in a separate incident in the second half. Now, obviously, it's really easy to combine those two things, and we don't know how linked they were to one another. We don't know is the honest answer. And it's very, very dangerous to kind of speculate and suggest that they were linked, because it could have been a completely innocuous moment as well. There's been suggestions that people saw the little pop in his knee in that moment. So obviously it hadn't popped prior to halftime. So any checks that the doctors do, who are far more qualified than any of us that are watching. What I have an issue with is that if there was an issue at the end of the first half, if we went down injured, don't take the risk. It's really easy to say with the benefit of hindsight, but we've got all this depth, we've got all this depth in the squad. We could have taken him off. It's really easy to say that now, as I mentioned, really easy to say it, but I'm not pointing fingers at the medical team. I'm not pointing fingers at the pitch or the training pitches. Players do just get injured. It's the reality. It's like I can compare it to the ticket situation. People moaning the fact that they're not getting tickets in the ballot system. It happens because the chances are you're going to miss out because there are more people wanting tickets than there are people than there are tickets available. Same with this. There is a chance that a player, because there's so many players playing so much football, that injuries are going to happen. The chance, the probability of it happening is there, and so it does. Thomas Partey obviously faced injuries, didn't necessarily have them. Jurrien Timber has had injuries at Ajax. His last one was in, last one where he missed a number of games was in February 2022. So he has injuries, but he's not had a knee issue as far as I'm aware in terms of a ligament issue, but I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he hasn't. But they can just happen to players. I myself, we joke about it on the live show and stuff like that. I myself ruptured my ACL, and I'd never had an issue with my knee before that point. I'd never, ever, ever done anything to my knee, never injured my knee, never injured that area. And yet when I ruptured my ACL playing football, that was the first of it happening. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that there's an issue with Arsenal with what the pitch is here or things like that. I think that I agree with the Dr. Rajpal Brai. I think that the main cause of an increased number of injuries is an increased number of games and an increased demand of minutes, an increase on the number of tournaments that players are having to play, and that's just counting. That's not it's not even debatable. More games, more minutes means more injuries are going to be likely to happen. So that's the reality of the situation. It's just counting. It's not something you can really disagree with, sadly. Mel says, is there any post ACL player getting back to their best? Absolutely gutted for Jurrien. Yeah, I'm sure there's loads. Obviously, Tomiyasu had a knee injury. He suffered, come back to it. Jesus had an MCL issue, which I really kind of hope that it is an MCL thing instead of an ACL, because that's the better one to injure, which is horrible. But it's very difficult to, off the top of my head, I'm sure people in the chat box will tell me players that have had ACL injuries. Who's the Italian guy? Zaniolo? He's gotten back to some really good game time now, being linked back again with Aston Villa, potentially coming to the Premier League. Zlatan, I think, had a serious ACL injury. Yeah, there you go. Omar Zlatan, potentially well. Alan Shearer suffered a really serious ACL injury and went on to become the Premier League's top goal scorer. I know that Arsenal have not had the best of times with it. Rob Holding, looked really good prior to his ACL issue, and then sadly trailed off after his comeback. I think Callum Chambers had a similar thing also. Bellerin, never was the same player after it. I think we've had experiences, sadly, that players have had ACL issues and then haven't been able to come back at Arsenal in the same way. But maybe we'll see a difference. So there you go. Byron says Ramsey broke his leg horribly, and look how they came back. Yeah, exactly. Ramsey came back brilliantly. It was a different type of injury, though. Ligaments can't be. You can't, like a bone re-heals. Ligaments don't heal. You have to have reconstruction. You have to have either. So the route that I had is that I had tendons in my hamstring removed, and they were then reconstituted into they were twisted and turned into a new ACL ligament. Or a friend of mine had a cadaver ACL, which is where you take donated from somebody who has passed on, and you take their ACL in their knee and you insert that into somebody else's knee. Ligaments don't, ACLs do not, because they don't have a blood supply, whereas the MCL has a blood supply, so it can, but the ACL is not supplied by blood, so it can't. To my understanding, and I'm not a doctor, but this is the way it's been explained to me, they don't heal. So that's why you have to go through reconstruction and either go through the cadaver route or you go through the tendon route. But yeah, you can't just stitch back together someone's snapped ACL. Once it's snapped, you need to have that replaced, and it's very, very, very difficult to do. That's why you get associated injuries. That's why it happens again, because sometimes it's not going to be a perfect ACL. It's not going to be the ACL that you had prior to that. Once it's gone, it's gone. And what you have afterwards, you can be really lucky. I've been really lucky. The ACL surgery I had was brilliant. And I've never had an issue of redoing my knee, touch wood, to this point ever. And I've played football plenty since having that surgery when I fully got back to full fitness on it. And I haven't had the expertise and kind of physiotherapy afterwards that, footballers are exposed to. So you can, play football to a very high standard. Not, I didn't. But footballers certainly come back and can, but there you go. Right, let's go to Fuad says, TC, you probably covered this already, so I apologize, but what do you make of the Ashburton Army requesting 100 tickets for each home game? Do you think it's right, or should others get a chance as well? To be honest, I didn't necessarily agree with the statement that they put out at all, and I think that that's an issue that should have been dealt with very differently than the way it was dealt with. So yeah, look, I'm all in favor of the atmosphere being improved. I'm all in favor of what's the word I'm looking for? Mechanisms to try and improve the stadium atmosphere. But if we're going through a ticketing system that is, season ticket, I don't know actually like the process, so it's difficult for me to even comment on it because I don't know the processes behind where the tickets have come from, whether this was kind of a group that got guaranteed tickets. They weren't season ticket holders all sitting in one position. So I don't know how it technically works about how they even access the tickets in the first place. If they've had that allocation cut, there's an argument as to why one person is entitled to a ticket more than another. We talked about this on the live show. I'm worried we're getting into a very dangerous scenario where some fans believe they're more entitled to a ticket than somebody else. So why should somebody who is part of, a supporter group, any group, be entitled to a ticket more than a person going to their first game? I've always been of the opinion that somebody who's been going to Arsenal, has had a red membership for 10 years, is just entitled to go to a game as somebody going to their first game. If you're an Arsenal fan, for me, you are all equal. There is no Arsenal fan that's more of an Arsenal fan than someone else that wants to go to a game and support the club that they support. That's my opinion. I know that it's not always the most popular. I know that not everyone agrees with me. But for me, if you're a fan, you're as entitled to go as much as anyone else. And that's why I do have to kind of explain to people when they talk about and complain about the ticket system at the moment, is that, there are more people that want tickets than there are tickets to be given. So when people are posting onto social media that they've been unlucky in the ballot 4 times, I try to explain to people that if you're going off a red membership, I think there's something like a 2% chance. If every single red membership applies to that ballot, I think there's less than a 2% chance of you getting a ticket. So if you've missed 4 out of 4 games, the likelihood of that's probably going to happen, because you've got a 2% chance, less than that, if every single red member is applying for the ballot, around that figure. And if it's less than that, it's still, if it's half of that, it's only going to be doubling the percentage chance. So you're looking at 4%. If half of the number of red memberships do it, it's then only going to be 4% chance that you're going to get a ticket. So it's just demand, and it's just the availability. It's, again, another example where it's just counting. So it sucks that people can't get tickets. It sucks that people are left disappointed, but that is just the reality. It is just the reality. Can we improve the system? Yes. Do we have to try and tackle touting? Absolutely. Touting should be tackled. Touting should be discouraged. Touting should be eradicated. But when we talk about loyalty, what defines loyalty, it's very difficult to come to an agreed consensus on this. Let's go to James says, just an analysis I heard last night on a channel. Didn't watch it myself. Let me find it. Wasn't Timber's first half injury on the other knee? Second half ACL was actually the other knee. So we can't blame him for not taking him off. No, I don't. It's not about kind of the blame about taking him off. I just felt like if a player's had an injury where he's gone down receiving treatment in the first half, and you've got all of this depth, let's say hypothetically you've injured the other knee, I would have been saying the same thing. I think you've got all this depth. You're 2-0 up at home. You can bring on Tomiyasu or Kivior. Just do it. And I don't think we should take those risks. With that player in particular, if we're talking about Bukayo Saka, it might be different because we don't have the same level of depth that we do at left back. So you want to, you're more willing. And if the scoreline is 0-0 and you still need Saka on the field, I get that. But like Timber at 2-0 up, I just think there is a fair argument that we didn't need to risk him in the second half. But Arteta is not at fault for the injury at all. I just think it's more of a case of in the future, I think it's a learning curve. If a player's received extensive treatment for something in the first half and you've got really good depth in a position, just make the change, But it's not Arteta's fault that Timber has got an ACL injury, because it's completely by chance in an innocuous situation. Nick says, do other leagues have refereeing issues? Yeah. Watch La Liga, mate. Goodness me. Mr. Brez says, are you hopping on the Arsenal Lounge this season? We are. Unfortunately, we had to cancel last night's show because Lev got called away. It's difficult at the moment because obviously before it was Lev and Shaheen hosting, but because Shaheen's away and is not in the country at the moment and has very limited access to Wi-Fi, if Lev has a family thing, we have to cancel, which sucks, but it's just a reality. But hopefully we'll be able to put some shows on for this season because I do enjoy chatting with the boys. William Salibak says, TC, why do players throw their toys out of the pram when a big team comes knocking? And why are these grown men sitting in prams in the first place? What do you mean? Do they throw their toys at the pram when a big team comes knocking? I don't really get the question, to be honest. Maybe add some clarity for me, Salibak, and I'll try and... I don't really get it. Why are they complaining when big teams come along? I don't know. I don't know if they are. Abbas is exactly my point. Why risk a player when all the summer transfer window we have all this depth? And that's kind of what I'm saying. Again, I don't think you can point the finger at Arteta and say, you're the reason why you got that ACL injury. What I can think you can say is that if a player's received extensive treatment for an unrelated issue in the first half, you just don't need to take the risk. And I think that's probably what we'll learn from in the future. Amir says, I know that we have many options at left back, but should we really look at it that way? Most are natural centre backs anyway. And what we have multiple defensive issues like a few seasons ago. Hope this makes sense. It does make sense. What I would say, though, is that we don't play with a left back. You know, it's not really what I would describe as a traditional left back position. It's actually a position now which can be fulfilled by a player that's played the majority of their time at centre back. Jurrien Timber last season played every single Eredivisie match for Ajax at right centre back. Wasn't right back, wasn't left back. He played at centre back, and yet he played there at left back, playing in the mould and the style of a player that he's got with these skills. And Kiwior as well has played left back plenty for Poland, has played left back, even left wing back for Udinese, not Udinese, Spezia, sorry. Similar looking badge, aren't they? Black and white. But when it comes to those players, I don't think that it's an issue. I think that we don't play with a Tierney style player, and that's why the depth exists effectively for us in that position. Personally, that's the way that I see it. So there you go. Jalali says, I'm genuinely deflated after the Timber injury. Me too. This is a hammer blow that could be the difference this season, and I have full confidence in Arteta to find a replacement, and they do. I really hope that they do. For me, it is an absolute must that we do. Because I think there is scope to say that, as I said before, I think Holding's going to go eventually. Tierney's going to go eventually. I think Tomiyasu could move on one day. Who else have we got there? You know, it's not impossible to even think that Kiwior could get, you know, someone might come along and offer him regular football and he might therefore then want to leave. You know, it's not impossible to see that happening. Gabriel's being linked, you know, with the move away from the club at the moment. Who's to say? Zinchenko's had significant, you know, injury issues. I think it makes sense to go out and bring somebody in. I say it should be a right back. You know, I think a right back that can play centre back as well would be great. And I think Simakan fits that as a profile. So that would be the player that I'd personally go with. So there, that would probably be my choice. James says, Tom, would you consider selling Balogun to Spurs? If so, should they pay more? I don't think I'd ever consider it. I think the money that they'd have to offer would go beyond anything realistic that I think they would offer. So I just can't see me ever seeing it happen and agreeing to it for the money that I think that we would get offered. So no, I wouldn't. Peter says, Tom, do you think the only reason the manager rule came in was about ex-players and pundits complaining about Arteta every week? I think that certainly made it more public. I think that got Arteta a lot more press, a lot more focus. So, yeah, I think there is a level of responsibility that pundits and players hold, ex-players hold regarding these new rules because they brought more attention to it. So, obviously, that's going to get it talked about more. So, yeah, I do think it is in part because of that. Damien says, I think I may be to playing for Timber's injury. I got the away shirt with his name on and number. I should have known better. Damien, there's nothing good that can come from that away shirt, my friend, and you've proven it. you have proven it, I'm afraid. Djan says, Tom, any players that we can get on loan to cover our injuries? A loan is maybe something that we can consider. The problem with loan deals is very difficult to get good players. I suppose Joao Cancelo is the obvious one. Can you sign him on loan with an option or an obligation to buy? If he reaches certain appearances, would Man City even do that? I'd be very surprised if they would. Pavard is obviously another player that I know people have talked about. Is he being linked with Manchester United? Or let's have a look. Yeah, maybe Man United are going in for Pavard. Maybe he's a player that Arsenal should look at instead. Not a bad option. Cody says, Tom, if teams sell to rivals or buy from rivals, should there be a separate charge for selling and buying? Yeah, I think that absolutely you should see an increase in, you know, a figure in what a player is going to go for. So, yeah, I absolutely do think there's a premium associated with that. Charlie says, Timber news was a proper gut shot. I felt like he was a game changer for us in a big way in away games. Yeah, me too. It's it's just so gutting. Like, I really, really, really am so down about the whole Timber thing. It was a real... When it happened on the field, that is all I thought about for the whole of the second half. Like, we won, and I was overjoyed that we won. But every other ounce of my mind was distracted with this Timber situation because I just know how good he is. The silver lining is that Zinchenko is expected to be fit and that hopefully he'll be ready to come in and play against Crystal Palace. That is the hope. And what I would say is that if he's not 100%, don't play him in this game. Don't rush him back. We've got Kivior, we've got Tomiyasu that can play. Don't rush Zinchenko back. Make sure that Zinchenko is in the absolute peak physical condition that he can possibly be in before you then play him. Let him get fully. If that means that we don't use him in the next 2 games, I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that, as long as what we're doing is ensuring that he is the absolute peak condition before coming into a game. Of course, I think you need to play games to get yourself to a certain level of match fitness, of course, but you need to give that Zinchenko profile, just Zinchenko in general, I'm talking about as a profile, the man, the person, the human being. You need to give him the most opportunity to come back into the team for the longest period of time with reducing the risk of a re-injury as much as possible. So there is no need to risk Zinny. And I think that in itself is another example of why I don't think we need to sign a left back, because if we don't need to rush Zinchenko back, which I don't think we do, because we've got Kivior and we've got Tomiyasu, I don't think that we need to necessarily rush him back. And what a great place to be in this situation now. Like, how great is it that we sit here talking about the fact that an injury to a key player, it's not got me panicking in the sense that position in particular needs cover. I would like to see us sign somebody. If we get to the end of the window and we haven't signed a defender, I will be a bit gutted, but I don't think it's as gutted as I was, say, in January of 2022 when we let Bamiyang go and we didn't sign a striker. That I thought was a big, big problem. But you look at this situation where we find ourselves in now, we have a lot of depth in defence, but I would like us, I think it is, as close to a necessity as it can be, really, without being one, maybe, to bring somebody in. And I would like us to bring somebody in. I think that would be the right step for Arsenal to take. So let's see if they indeed end up doing that. Zuntar says, is Jules Koundé a great competition or backup for Saliba and Benoit? I don't think Barcelona would let him leave, to be honest. I think you'd have to pay a very, very big fee to get him. So I don't think that one is possible. I think we're going to round things off there. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. It is very much appreciated. I hope that you have a fantastic Tuesday. As I say at the start of the show, it's the worst day of the week. So get over it, get through it, stay safe, stay well. And it's hopefully going to be a positive day. Who knows? We might even get a transfer announcement today. Let's keep our fingers crossed. We have some positivity to talk about and some positive things to discuss in tomorrow morning's show, which there will, of course, be one. So thank you, everyone, for listening, tuning in. And I look forward to it. It's difficult. There's a press conference on Thursday, is like during the live show. So we might have to do a live show that goes over the press conference. I'm on a day off that day, so I'm not working, which means I can actually do a live show whilst the press conference is going on with Arteta. We might do a press conference watch along. Believe it or not, we might actually do that. So yeah, let's wait and see what happens. But the press conference is due to take place when I'm going to be live, I think. So let's see what happens. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It's very much appreciated. I will see you all tomorrow morning, of course, and drop a like, subscribe, all that lovely stuff. Takes just a second, helps us out massively. Leave your comments down below on anything you think you've got thoughts on. And as always, and most importantly, up the Arsenal.